The wind cut like a blade through the evening fog rolling across the empty parking lot, and the child's tiny voice trembled louder than the storm. She clutched her thin coat to her chest, golden curls whipping across her face as she looked up at the man towering above her. In that moment, when her shivering hand tightened around his, Jonathan Hale, one of the wealthiest men in the United States, felt something break open inside him. Pain, guilt, a memory he had spent a lifetime trying to bury. And when the little girl whispered, "Please don't leave us outside," Jonathan dropped to one knee, wrapped her icy fingers in his warm palms, and whispered back, "Never again. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to the world." Jonathan had not planned to be anywhere near that part of Tacoma, Washington that night. He was supposed to be on a private jet headed to New York, finalizing a merger that would push his company's worth past the 20 billion mark. But life has a way of redirecting those who have forgotten where they came from, and Jonathan had indeed forgotten. He had forgotten nights like these, cold, lonely, filled with questions a child should never have to ask. He had forgotten the hunger, the shame, the sound of his own mother's tears when they had nowhere to go. He had crawled his way out of that world, mile by mile, dollar by dollar, walling off the past so completely that he had convinced himself it no longer mattered. But the sight of little Harper standing in the rain beside her exhausted mother, Rachel, made every wall crumble. They weren't begging. They weren't asking for money. They were simply trying to survive. Their car had broken down. Their belongings were stuffed in bags in the back seat. And their faces, the quiet fear in Rachel's eyes, the trembling hope on Harper's, unlocked something Jonathan had spent years trying to forget, the child he once was, shivering behind a dumpster behind a closed gas station, praying someone might see him. Jonathan stood slowly, gesturing for them to follow him to his car. He didn't tell them who he was. He didn't mention the private jet. He didn't even think about the business meeting he was about to miss. All he could think about was making sure they were warm, safe, inside. The drive to the nearest shelter was silent, except for Harper's occasional soft sniffle. Jonathan kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching her small hands rub together for heat. Rachel sat stiffly beside her daughter, trying to appear strong even though Jonathan could see the fatigue in every line of her posture. When they arrived, the shelter's lights flickered, its windows fogged with condensation. Jonathan walked them inside, his protective instinct tightening like a shield around them, but the receptionist looked at him with a mixture of apology and helplessness. The place was full, overflowing. There was no bed left, not even a cot. Jonathan felt Harper's hand find his again. It was almost unconscious, the way she reached for him, like he was the one solid thing in a world that kept tilting beneath her feet. And as she whispered, "We can stay outside. We've done it before," he felt a wave of emotion so fierce it almost drove him to his knees. No child should ever say those words, ever. Without hesitation, Jonathan told them he had another place they could go. He led them back outside, helped Harper into his car, and drove through the rain-slicked streets to the only place he trusted to be safe, his own home. A sprawling, secluded estate overlooking Puget Sound, surrounded by gardens and guarded gates. When they stepped inside, Harper gasped softly at the warmth, the soft lights, the smell of fresh bread coming from the kitchen. Rachel tried to protest, insisting they couldn't stay, that it wasn't appropriate, that he didn't even know them. But Jonathan simply shook his head and told her they would talk in the morning. Tonight, they needed rest. Tonight, they needed comfort. Tonight, they were staying here. As Harper settled onto the plush guest bed, Jonathan sat quietly in the hallway, listening to the slow steadying of her breathing. He hadn't prayed in years, but he found himself whispering a quiet plea that somehow he was doing the right thing. When Rachel stepped out of the room, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, she looked lighter and yet somehow more vulnerable. She thanked him softly, her voice cracking not with fear but with relief, the kind that only comes after weeks, months, or years of carrying too much alone. Over the next few days, Jonathan learned everything he could about them. Rachel had lost her job in a downsizing wave. The landlord raised the rent beyond anything she could afford. The car was their last refuge after they couldn't keep up with bills. Through it all, she had fought fiercely to protect Harper, doing whatever she could to keep her daughter safe. Jonathan admired her strength, her resilience, and the quiet dignity she carried even when the world had turned its back on her. Those days changed him more than all the years of running billion-dollar companies ever had. He found himself smiling again, genuinely. He found himself listening more, caring more, remembering who he once was, and the promises he made to himself when he was just a scared little boy. He had vowed that when he grew up, he would help others like him. Somewhere along the road to wealth, he had forgotten. But Harper's trembling hand had helped him remember. Jonathan arranged a job for Rachel at one of his nonprofit foundations, a role that matched her experience and paid enough for her to stand on her own feet again. He helped them find a home, not as charity, but as a bridge to a new beginning. And when Harper hugged him goodbye after they moved into their new apartment, Jonathan felt something inside him settle, like a wound finally given. Permission to heal. Weeks later, Rachel invited him to dinner, a simple meal in their small, warm kitchen. Harper showed him her drawings, many of them with 3 figures holding hands. When Rachel stepped away to stir a pot on the stove, Harper tugged Jonathan's sleeve and whispered, "Mom says you saved us." Jonathan swallowed, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "You saved me too. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these real, emotional stories alive. Before the ending, comment below, kindness can change everything. And with that truth, Jonathan understood that sometimes the greatest wealth a person can offer is not money, but the simple act of showing up when someone needs you most.